Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. As Ifiri took his first step toward the Earth observation room, he noticed the staff tensing at his presence. He only nodded and smiled, savoring the fact that he was about to introduce them to his idea. To turn this mission into something more than observation, and conduct the test of a plague that he hoped would erase every single human from that blue planet. His footsteps echoed against the metallic walls, each tap a measured announcement of his arrival. The casual conversations that had filled the observation room moments before died like flames starved of oxygen. Blue eyes that had been wandering, perhaps sharing a joke or discussing last night's entertainment broadcast, snapped back to their flat screens at once. The Imperial Watchers straightened in their chairs, fingers suddenly busy with controls, pretending they had been monitoring Earth's data streams without interruption, that their sacred duty had never wavered even for a moment. They were all Icradians, beings from Icrad, whose appearance would have been nearly human if not for the distinctive features that marked their species. Fine fur covered their bodies, including their faces, giving their skin a soft, velvety texture. The fur varied in shade from individual to individual. Some bore patterns of darker whorls against lighter backgrounds. Others displayed subtle gradients that shifted from deep brown to almost golden in the artificial light. Their purple lips, a trait unique to them even when comparing the animals of their world, moved silently as they mouthed data readings or pursed in concentration. The color was not uniform. Some had lips of deep violet, others a lighter lavender, but all unmistakably purple, a result of unique proteins in their blood that gave their species this distinctive marking. Ifiri himself bore these same features, though his fur had been carefully groomed to project authority, with patterns shaved into the shorter fur around his temples, a current fashion among the political elite. His purple lips were currently curved in an expression of satisfaction. His gaze swept across the room before settling on Chief Observer Lihir, who stood at the central command station with the rigid posture of someone trying very hard to appear as though they had been standing exactly that way for hours. Ifiri's smile widened. He had caught the telltale signs. The slight adjustment of Lihir's uniform collar, the way his subordinate quickly minimized something on his personal display, the forced casualness with which he now studied the main viewing screen. Lihir had been neglecting his duties mere seconds ago, just like the rest of them. Perfect. This lapse, however minor, would give Ifiri the leverage he needed to ensure his proposal received a fair hearing. Even if the idea of deploying a weaponized plague against Earth might initially seem extreme to this roomful of scientists and data analysts. Ifiri approached Lihir slowly, his mind already working through the conversation ahead. He had rehearsed various approaches during his journey to the observation station, each designed to maximize his chances of success. The direct approach, simply announcing his intention to deploy a biological weapon, would likely trigger immediate resistance. These observers were scientists first, military strategists second. They dealt in data and probabilities, not in the harsh realities of interstellar conquest. They spent their days analyzing atmospheric compositions and technological emissions, tracking the movement of human satellites and the growth of their cities. They understood Earth as a collection of data points, not as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could eliminate them. No, he decided as he closed the distance between them, he would need to be more subtle. He would guide Lihir and his team to recognize the danger humanity posed on their own terms, letting them reach the conclusion that drastic action was not just justified, but necessary. Like a skilled sculptor, he would chip away at their scientific layer until the shape of fear emerged from within. "Chief Observer Lihir," Ifiri said, his tone carefully modulated to convey both respect for the position and confidence in his own authority. I trust the Earth observations are proceeding smoothly. Lihir turned, his blue eyes meeting Etheri's. Imperial Strategist Etheri, he acknowledged with a slight bow. Yes, all systems are functioning within normal parameters. The human population continues its activities, unaware of our surveillance. Excellent, Etheri replied, then tilted his head as if a thought had just occurred to him. Tell me, Lihir, do you know how many planets our species currently has colonies on? The question clearly caught Lihir off guard. His brow fur rippled slightly, an Icradian tell that indicated confusion or surprise. 6, Imperial Strategist, he answered after a moment's hesitation. We have established colonies on every semi-habitable planet and moon within our solar system. The furthest is the research station on Kegg's third moon, though calling it semi-habitable might be generous. His purple lips quirked slightly at his own small joke, but his eyes remained puzzled by the seemingly random question. Etheri nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. The respect in Lihir's voice, the use of his full title, these were good signs. While Etheri might not be their direct superior in the chain of command, his position as Imperial Strategist carried significant influence. The observers knew that crossing him could have consequences, even if he couldn't issue them direct orders. 6 colonies, Etheri repeated thoughtfully, beginning to pace in a small circle near Lihir's station. Spread across our entire solar system. Quite an achievement for our species, wouldn't you say? Indeed, Imperial Strategist, Lihir agreed, though his confusion was becoming more apparent. And yet, Etheri continued, stopping his pacing to face Lihir directly, we have not conquered Earth, a planet teeming with life, with a biosphere remarkably compatible with our own needs, orbiting a stable star. Why do you think that is, Chief Observer? The question sparked something in the room. Etheri noticed several heads turning, screens forgotten as the observers' scientific minds overcame their pretense of intense focus. Lihir himself straightened, his expression shifting from confusion to engagement. Well, Imperial Strategist, Lihir began, warming to the topic. The primary obstacle is distance, of course. The gulf between star systems remains our greatest challenge. The energy requirements alone, added a female voice from a nearby station. Etheri turned to see Ladir, one of the senior observers, her fur patterns distinctly lighter than most. We have no faster-than-light travel. Even getting our observation probe to Earth cost nearly 3 trillion credits. The economic impact was felt across all 6 colonies. And that's just for a probe the size of a head, interjected Ixir from his position at the Deep Space Communications Array. His fur was darker, almost black in the artificial light. A relativistic kinetic weapon large enough to devastate human life would cost, well, the calculations suggest it would require dedicating our entire gross planetary product for at least 10 years. The economic devastation would likely collapse our civilization before we could complete it. A younger observer, whose name Etheri didn't know, raised his hand tentatively before speaking. Even if we could afford such a weapon and successfully deploy it, we would still face the time problem. At our current best speeds, a colony ship would take over 200 years to reach Earth. By the time our people arrived, the humanity might have recovered or worse. Lihir finished, his scientific mind clearly engaged now. This is why our mission is so critical. We're not just observing Earth for academic purposes. Every bit of data we collect, every analysis of human technological development, feeds into the planning for the eventual generational ship. We need to predict not just what human technology is like now, but what it will be like in 2 centuries when our colony ship arrives. The projection models are sobering. the unnamed younger observer added, pulling up his own holographic display with trembling fingers. Based on their current rate of advancement, by the time our ship arrives, humans could have developed past our current tech. They've already split the atom, harvested the power of their sun, and sent probes beyond their solar system. What if they develop some form of faster-than-light communication? Or worse, faster-than-light travel? That's considered theoretically impossible, Ladir interjected, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced of her own words. So was powered flight, Ixi countered. So was atomic energy. We can't say faster-than-light travel is impossible. Which is why, Ixi went on, his voice taking on a darker tone, the timing of the generational ship launch is so critical. Launch too early, and we arrive to find humans have developed defenses we couldn't anticipate. Launch too late, and they might develop their own interstellar capabilities and find us first. If we haven't developed our own by then. The room had become animated now, multiple conversations sprouting as the observers discussed various scenarios. Ifiri watched with satisfaction as they worked themselves into an increasingly concerned state. They were doing his work for him, painting a picture of the enormous challenge and risk their species faced. He could see it in their expressions, the dawning realization that their observation mission might not provide enough data, that the generational ship might arrive at Earth only to be destroyed by human defenses they failed to predict. One observer was frantically calculating something on his personal display, his purple lips moving soundlessly as he worked through the mathematics of relativistic combat. Another had pulled up images of human military installations, zooming in on what appeared to be missile silos and naval bases, trying to extrapolate from current capabilities to future threats. The fear was spreading through the room like a contagion, exactly as Ifiri had planned. Now was his moment. Ifiri raised his hand slightly, a gesture that commanded attention without seeming aggressive. The conversations died down as all eyes turned to him. "Your concerns are well-founded," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "The generational ship represents an enormous investment of resources and lives. Thousands of our people will be born, live and die aboard that vessel, all for the chance to claim Earth for our species. But what if," he paused for effect, "what if we could ensure that when that ship arrives, there would be no battle to fight?" The room fell completely silent. Even the background noise of the computers seemed to fade as the observers processed his words. "What are you suggesting, Imperial Strategist?" Lihir asked carefully. "Your probe," Ifiri said, gesturing toward the main display showing Earth in real time. "It has a nanoprinter, does it not, for repairs and maintenance?" "Yes," Lihir confirmed slowly. "But the Xenobiology Institute has been analyzing the biological data you've collected on humans for years," Ifiri continued, beginning to pace again. "Their immune systems, their vulnerabilities, their biological weaknesses. We've developed something, a virus, specifically designed to target humans." The reaction was immediate. Several observers began speaking at once, their skepticism overcoming protocol. "The probe isn't designed for planetary development. The nanoprinter has limited material reserves. The risk to the mission!" Ifiri raised his hand again, and the protests subsided, though he could see the doubt written across every furred face in the room. "One at a time, please," he said calmly. "Chief Observer, what is your primary concern?" Lahir's brow fur was practically standing on end with agitation. "Imperial Strategist, with all due respect, the probe has no landing capabilities. It's designed purely for orbital observation. How would you propose delivering this virus to the planet's surface?" The nanoprinter could construct a small delivery vehicle, Etheri replied smoothly. The virus itself would be microscopic, a few grams of material at most. Any simple atmospheric entry vehicle would suffice.
But the material reserves, Ladir protested. The nanoprinter only has enough raw material for emergency repairs. We calculated for a mission duration of
300 years, yes, Etheri finished. But let me ask you this. Which poses a greater risk to our mission? Using some of our repair materials now to eliminate the human threat, or sending a generational ship full of our people into a battle against an enemy whose capabilities we can only guess at? You're asking us to risk our only observation platform, Ixir said flatly. If something goes wrong, if the probe fails after we've depleted the nanoprinter reserves, we lose our eyes on Earth. The generational ship would be flying blind. And if the humans develop faster than light travel in the next century, Etheri countered, if they find us before we're ready, your observations won't matter much when human warships appear in our skies. The argument continued for several more minutes, with the observers raising technical challenges and Etheri countering with strategic necessities. He could feel the room's resistance, the scientific caution that made these observers excellent at their jobs, but poor at decisive action. Time to play his strongest card. I understand your concerns, Etheri said, his tone shifting to something more formal. Perhaps it would interest you to know that this proposal has already been reviewed at the highest levels. The Xenobiology Institute's work has impressed many important people, including... He paused for maximum impact. Emperor Vikrin himself. The room went still again. Invoking the Emperor's name was not done lightly. The Emperor has reviewed this proposal? Lahir asked, his voice carefully neutral. More than reviewed, Ethir replied, reaching into his uniform to produce a small glad display. He has endorsed it, though, of course, he respects the autonomy of the Earth observation mission. He would never directly order you to act against your judgment. He merely asked me to present the option and share his perspective. He activated the projector. The Emperor's image appeared, resplendent in his ceremonial armor, his purple lips moving as his recorded voice filled the room.
The work of the Xenobiology Institute represents our best hope for a peaceful conquest of Earth. Their engineered virus is a masterpiece of biological warfare, designed to eliminate the human threat while leaving the planet's resources intact for our colonization. I have full confidence in their work, and I am sending my trusted Imperial strategist, Etheri, to discuss implementation with our dedicated observers. I trust they will give this proposal the serious consideration it deserves, understanding that the future of our expansion beyond our solar system may well depend on their decision.
The Emperor's image paused, his gaze seeming to look directly at each observer in turn, despite being only a recording.
I should note,
the recording continued,
that while I deeply respect the autonomy of our scientific institutions, I would be disappointed if excessive caution prevented us from seizing this opportunity. The generals who refuse to adopt new tactics in our colonial wars are not remembered kindly by history. I trust the Earth observation mission will show more wisdom.
The recording ended, leaving the observers in stunned silence. Etheri could see the conflict in their faces, their caution warring with the political reality of the Emperor's recommendation. The threat, though veiled in diplomatic language, was clear. Careers would end, funding would disappear, and the Earth observation mission itself might face restructuring if they refused. We need to discuss this, Lihir said finally. Privately, Imperial strategist. Would you mind waiting outside while we confer?
Of course,
Ifiri replied smoothly, offering a slight bow.
Take all the time you need. This decision should not be made lightly.
He turned and walked from the observation room, his footsteps echoing once more against the metallic walls. This was expected. The observers were cautious by nature and by training. They would debate, they would agonize, but in the end, they would do what the Emperor had all but commanded. His virus would be deployed. The corridor outside the observation room was austere, with only a single bench for waiting visitors. Ifiri sat and tried to project patience, though internally his mind raced through contingencies and possibilities. Hours passed. His tailored uniform, so impressive when he'd entered, began to feel constricting. The bench, clearly designed by someone who had never intended anyone to actually use it for extended periods, grew increasingly uncomfortable. He had risen to pace the corridor for what felt like the 100th time when the door finally opened. Lihir emerged, his expression unreadable. "Imperial strategist," he said formally. "After extensive deliberation, we have decided to proceed with your proposal." Ifiri felt a surge of satisfaction, but kept his expression neutral.
"I'm pleased we could reach an agreement, Chief Observer. The Empire will remember your cooperation."
"Indeed," Lihir replied, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely pleased about what they would be remembered for. "If you'll follow me, we'll need the viral specifications to begin the nanoprinting process." They returned to the observation room, where the atmosphere had shifted from skeptical resistance to resigned determination. The observers had made their decision, and now their scientific thinking took over. Ifiri produced a small memory crystal from his uniform, containing the complete specifications for the virus the Xenobiology Institute had designed. "This contains everything?" Lihir asked, accepting the crystal with the care one might use for handling antimatter.
"Complete genetic sequences, protein structures, replication mechanisms, everything your nanoprinter will need," Ifiri confirmed. "I should note that the Xenobiology Institute has run extensive simulations. The virus is designed to spread rapidly through human populations while remaining stable enough to complete its work before their immune systems can adapt."
"We lack the expertise to verify these specifications," Lihir said, inserting the crystal into a secured data port. "We're observers and physicists, not biological warfare specialists."
"The verification has already been done by the leading experts in the field," Ifiri assured him. "Your job is simply to print and deploy. The virus will do the rest."
Lihir nodded slowly, already pulling up displays showing the probe's current status and orbital position. "The process won't be quick. Even with faster-than-light communication to the probe, we're looking at significant time delays. The nanoprinting alone will take several days. We're pushing the system far beyond its intended parameters. Then, we need to construct the delivery vehicle, calculate the optimal deployment vector, wait for the right orbital window."
"How long in total?"
Ifiri asked. 10 days minimum, Lihir replied after consulting with his team.
"Excellent,"
Ifiri said, already planning his next moves.
"That gives me time to make proper arrangements."
"Arrangements?" Lihir raised an eyebrow.
"The successful deployment of our first interstellar biological weapon is a historic moment," Ifiri explained. "The Emperor will want to witness it, along with the regional governors and other key figures. We'll need to arrange a proper viewing ceremony."
He could see the distaste in Lihir's expression. The scientist clearly didn't appreciate his mission being turned into a political spectacle. But the chief observer merely nodded. "We'll keep you informed of our progress, Imperial strategist," Lihir said formally.
"I look forward to it,"
Ifiri replied, already imagining the accolades he would receive when Earth's human infestation was eliminated.
"The Empire's expansion depends on bold action. Today, We've taken the first step toward claiming our rightful place among the stars.
He left the observation room with a spring in his step, his mind already turning to the guest list for the viewing ceremony. This would be his moment of triumph, the achievement that would secure his legacy in the Empire's history. 15 days later, Etheri stood in the Grand Observation Chamber, feeling paradoxically small despite his central role in the day's events. The room had been transformed from its usual utilitarian purpose into something approaching a throne room. The Emperor sat on a raised platform in the center, his ceremonial armor shiny. Around him, in concentric circles, sat the Empire's elite, regional governors, military commanders, industrial leaders, and influential scientists. The most powerful individuals in Icradian civilization had gathered to witness what Etheri had promised would be a historic moment. The air itself seemed to thrum with power and anticipation. Servants moved silently between the gathered elite, offering refreshments on crystalline platforms that floated at precisely elbow height. The walls had been configured to display a real-time feed of Earth, the blue-white jewel rotating slowly against the starfield, unaware that its fate was being decided by beings light-years away. Every few minutes, data streams would flicker across subsidiary displays, atmospheric readings, population centers, technological emissions, a constant reminder of why they were here. The past 15 days had been busy. What had begun as his initiative had quickly grown beyond his control as word spread through the highest levels of government. The opposing political faction, always eager to undermine the Emperor's projects, had somehow gained enough influence to restrict access to the Earth observation mission. Neither Etheri nor even the Emperor himself could now directly monitor the mission's progress. They were forced to rely on whatever information Chief Observer Lihir chose to share at this public presentation. Not that Etheri was particularly concerned. His goal had been achieved. The virus was being deployed. Whether he could monitor every detail of its progress mattered little compared to the ultimate result. When Earth's human population was eliminated, clearing the way for safe Icradian colonization, he would be remembered as the visionary who made it possible. A door opened on the far side of the chamber, and Lihir entered. The chief observer looked uncomfortable in his formal dress uniform, clearly more at home in the practical attire of the observation room. An announcer, voice amplified by hidden speakers, filled the chamber with enthusiastic proclamation. "Lords and ladies of the Empire, distinguished guests, His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Vikrin. I present Chief Observer Lihir, commander of the Earth observation mission, and the individual who has overseen the deployment of our revolutionary biological weapon against the human threat. He comes before us now to report on the status of Earth and the success of our first strike in the conquest of another star system." Polite applause filled the chamber as Lihir made his way to the presentation platform opposite the Emperor. Etheri noticed the chief observer's fur was meticulously groomed, but his movements carried a tension that seemed at odds with what should have been a triumphant moment. Lihir reached the platform and stood silently for a moment, activating the projection system behind him. The first image appeared, Earth, blue and white, hanging in the void. Then, without preamble, Lihir began to speak. "Your Imperial Majesty, esteemed members of the Empire, I stand before you to report on the deployment of the engineered virus on Earth. As Imperial strategist Etheri proposed, and His Majesty endorsed, we utilized our observation probe's nanoprinter to create both the virus and delivery vehicle. 15 days ago, despite the considerable risks to our mission, we started the deployment process that proceeded as intended." The projection behind him changed, showing what appeared to be human news broadcasts with overlaid translations. Images of humans wearing masks, empty store shelves, lines of ground vehicles at testing locations. "Initial deployment was perfect. Lahir continued, his tone clinical. The virus spread rapidly through human populations, triggering what they've classified as another pandemic. Their media reported widespread concern, government health agencies mobilized, and we observed significant behavioral changes in the population. Efiri felt his chest swell with pride. The plan had worked. The humans were succumbing to... However, Lahir said, and that single word fell like a stone into still water. The impacts were not what we anticipated. Observe. The projection shifted to show what appeared to be a human store, shelves empty of certain products. The humans did panic. They purchased large quantities of supplies. In some regions, they exhausted their supplies of toilet paper. A ripple of confusion ran through the audience. Toilet paper? In fact, Lahir continued, his voice taking on a distinctly sarcastic edge, the toilet paper shortage appears to have been the most significant impact of our carefully engineered superweapon. Within days, the humans had classified the virus as, and I quote from their medical authorities, significantly less severe than seasonal influenza. The projection changed again, this time showing what appeared to be social media posts. Even without understanding the language, the intent was clear from the images. Humans were making jokes, memes, they called them, comparing the new virus unfavorably to something called COVID. The humans are laughing, Lahir said flatly. They're sharing humorous images about how this virus is so weak it can be cured with chicken soup. Chicken soup! He repeated the words as if they personally offended him. A basic hot liquid with avian proteins and vegetables. That is their recommended treatment for our ultimate biological weapon. The chamber had gone completely silent. Efiri felt the blood drain from his face, his fur standing on end in horror. This couldn't be happening. To be absolutely clear, Lahir continued, now showing charts and graphs. The virus did exactly what it was designed to do. It spread efficiently. It infected billions of humans. It triggered immune responses. The failure was not in the development, but in the fundamental assumption that human biology could be understood from a distance of light years, and that their immune systems wouldn't simply shrug it off. More images appeared. Humans going about their daily lives, some wearing masks, but most not even bothering. Children playing in parks, adults returning to work, life continuing with barely a disruption. The Xenobiology Institute, Lahir said, and now his purple lips twisted in what could only be described as contempt, based their design on observational data and theoretical models. What they failed to account for was that human immune systems have been tested by millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of living in close proximity to animals and each other. They've survived plagues that killed significant percentages of their population. They've developed medical infrastructure specifically to handle biological threats, and we sent them something weaker than their seasonal cold. He turned to face the Emperor directly, abandoning all pretense of diplomatic language. Your Majesty, in pursuing this ill-conceived plan, we have depleted our probe's nanoprinter reserves. The observation probe can no longer repair itself if damaged. We've essentially sacrificed a 3 trillion credit mission to give humans the sniffles. Conservative estimates suggest we've lost at least a century of observational capability, and we'll need to launch another probe at tremendous cost if we want to continue monitoring human technological development. Worse, he continued, now addressing the entire chamber, we've learnt that human biology is far more resilient than our models predicted. Any future biological warfare attempts will need to account for this resistance, which we now cannot properly study because we've crippled our observation capability. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Efiri could feel hundreds of eyes turning toward him, could sense the Emperor's growing rage, even from across the room. His grand moment of triumph had become a catastrophe. In conclusion, Lahir said, his tone returning to formal professionalism, The Earth viral deployment mission has failed in its primary objective. The humans remain unaffected beyond minor inconvenience. Our observation capabilities are severely compromised, and the generational ship, when it eventually launches, will still face a fully populated and defended Earth, all because we trusted theoretical models over empirical observation, and political pressure over science. He bowed stiffly. That concludes my report, Your Majesty. The Grand Observation Chamber remained frozen in silence for several heartbeats. Then, like a dam breaking, whispers erupted from every corner. Etheri saw regional governors leaning together in hurried conference, military commanders shaking their heads in disgust, scientists from rival institutes showing their satisfaction at the Xenobiology Institute's humiliation. Emperor Vic Rin sat motionless on his throne, but Etheri had served long enough to read the subtle signs of imperial fury. The slight tremor in his left hand, the way his jaw clenched beneath his carefully groomed fur. This failure wouldn't just reflect on Etheri or the Xenobiology Institute. The Emperor had publicly endorsed this plan, had allowed his image and words to be used to pressure the observers. Every whisper in the chamber was a small cut to his authority, every shocked expression a reminder that his judgment could be questioned. The opposing faction would feast on this failure for years. They would use it to block the Emperor's initiatives, to question his fitness, to prevent humanity's expansion to the stars. All because the humans had treated their ultimate plague with chicken soup. Etheri's mind raced, searching for some way to salvage the situation, some explanation or excuse that might deflect the blame. But what could he say? That the Xenobiology Institute's models were flawed? That would only emphasize his failure to verify their work? That the observers had made an error in deployment? Lihir had thoroughly documented that the virus had performed exactly as designed. No, there was no escape from this. His career, possibly his life, hung in the balance. All because those primitive humans on their distant world had immune systems that laughed at Icradian biological engineering. As the whispers grew louder, and the Emperor's silence grew more ominous, Etheri found himself fixated on a single, absurd thought. Somewhere on Earth, a human was probably eating chicken soup right now, completely unaware that they were enjoying the cure to an alien superplague. The chamber continued to buzz with shocked conversation, but Etheri heard none of it. He stood frozen, watching his future crumble like ancient parchment, all because humanity's greatest defense against alien invasion turned out to be their grandmother's soup recipe. Somewhere in the crowd, he heard someone actually laugh, a short, disbelieving sound that cut through the murmur like a blade. The absurdity of it all was becoming apparent to everyone. The mighty Icradian Empire, conquerors of 6 worlds, had been defeated by a home remedy.